Thank you very much. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Wintley Phipps. I was unconscious when they gave it to me. And at the age of 14 years old, I woke up one morning talking like this. It really messed up my father. If you can imagine your 14-year-old going, "Hey, Dad, how you doing this morning?" Not long ago, I ran into James Earl Jones, and I couldn't resist. I walked up to him and I said, "This is CNN." And he said, "How long have you had that?" It is so exciting to be here tonight. I want to thank the president of this great organization and my dear friend Willie Jolly, I see he's here. And it's just awesome to be in such a remarkable group of people. And for the next few moments, I'm just going to share, like I always do. One of my favorite quotes comes from one of my heroes of history. I'll talk about him in a little bit, Sir Winston Churchill, who once said that for a message to be immortal, it does not have to be eternal. And so for the next few moments, I'll just share as I am led. First, I want to tell you that it is an amazing gift. What I'm about to tell you can only happen in America. The story I'm about to tell you could only happen in America. My resume is really weird, very eclectic. You'll see on the same page Billy Graham Crusades and Saturday Night Live. You'll see Robert Schuller's Hour of Power, and you'll see Soul Train. Now, I know most of y'all have no idea what Soul Train is. Oh, I guess I got some boomers out here. But a man called me one day and he said, "Sir, I heard you sing this song about giving your life to God." I sing inspirational music. He said, "I want you to sing that song on Soul Train." And I said to myself, how is this man going to get me on Soul Train? Because that's all I've done is inspirational music. You see, I learned that you don't have to compromise to be recognized. I've learned that. And so he called up the host, Don Cornelius, and said, "I want you to put this young man on Soul Train." Don Cornelius said, "I'm sorry, I can't put anything religious on Soul Train." And the gentleman said, "Look, Don, all you got is young people dressed funny and, bumping into each other. And what this young man is trying to say in his music, those are the very young people who need to hear it." And Don Cornelius said, "I'm sorry, sir, I can't put anything religious on Soul Train." And the man said, "Listen, Don, my name is George Johnson of Johnson Products Company, Ultra Sheen, Afro Sheen, and my company's been backing your show for the last 8 years. Next thing I knew, I was the first gospel artist on Soul Train." And it has been a remarkable ride, only here in America. I was born in Trinidad in the Caribbean, and at the age of 10, my family moved to Montreal, Canada, where I grew up. Some Canucks out here. And to be a part of my new family and my new country, I joined a hockey team. And they made me goalie because I couldn't skate far. For those of you who didn't get that, that's the equivalent of Jamaican bobsled, you know what I mean? And I was actually born to a very difficult family situation, and I used to get away from my parents' troubles. I had a little red tricycle, And I'd go in the backyard of my house and turn the tricycle on its side and use one of the backside wheels as a steering wheel. And I would sit there for hours and I would dream. And I would dream that I was flying and driving to far away places in the world and meeting important people when I was 4 and 5 and 6 years old. When we moved to Montreal, I'll never forget, my father used to take us to the airport to say goodbye to people who were going back. You remember when going to the airport was a big thing? You'd pack a lunch. My father took us to the airport to say goodbye to people, and before leaving the airport, I'd look around to see if anybody was looking. I would grab a handful of the luggage tags and stuff them in my pocket. And I'd go home and close the door and get a pencil and print my name, Wintley Phipps, Flight 393 London, Flight 676 Paris. And growing up in all this confusion, all my life, however, I have had heroes who have mentored me. Some of them I've never met. Sir Winston Churchill was a hero who mentored me. I'll never forget, in 1995, I took a trip to his grave site beside a little church in Oxford in England. And it was VE Day, 50 years after the fall of the German Reich. And I'll never forget, I was by this grave site, and there were floral tributes that had been left earlier that morning before I got there by freedom fighters from Greece and France and Norway who 50 years later could not forget what Sir Winston Churchill meant to the world in a critical hour of Earth's history. But there was one tribute that I did not disturb, but I read it. It was obviously written by an American. It was on a single sheet of paper, handwritten, an American flag in the corner. And this American was thanking Sir Winston Churchill for what he meant to the world. And in it, he closed with words of John F. Kennedy about Sir Winston Churchill, who once said of Churchill, he commissioned the English language and sent it off to war. And that's what you do. Commission language and send it off to war. Some of the heroes I've never met. George Washington Carver did a documentary on his life. You know who he is? He invented peanut butter. Probably your hero too. But he said one day, he asked God to show him the mysteries of creation. And God told him, you can't handle the mysteries of creation. Ask for something you can handle. He said, then he asked God, show me the mysteries of the peanut. Another one of my heroes was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I remember sitting watching a film, Montgomery to Memphis, black and white, and hear this speech, I have a dream, and heard pathos like I'd never heard it before. And I resolved in my heart, I wanted to be like that kind of man who was willing to even die for what he believed. I've had heroes that I've never met. Hey, I never met him, but Luther Vandross was one of my heroes. Oh my goodness. That man could paint 1,000 colors in one song. Can I tell you something about singers that you may never know? Every singer in every song makes mistakes. But the great ones know how to make a stumble look like a pirouette. The great ones dazzle you with their recovery. And then I've had heroes that I've met and I've worked with, it's been my joy to know. I was the last one to sing Amazing Grace for Mother Teresa before she died. I was in the crowd that welcomed Nelson Mandela when he came out of prison. I was on an Eastern Airlines flight you remember them, years ago. Los Angeles to Atlanta, big L-1011. Always used to fly like that, you know. And I saw this lady and flight attendant. She looked a little discouraged. So I went back to my seat and I got a cassette of my first album. You remember cassettes? And I said to her, you know, I just feel impressed to give this to you. The kind of music I sing is inspirational music. She said, thank you so much. She said, I travel with a cassette player. And she said, thank you. I've been having a rough time, and this will be really a blessing. 3 days later, she's working another flight and runs into a man who's on the flight by the name of Cliff Barrows, who directed all the choirs and the music for the Billy Graham Crusades for about 50 years. She says, Mr. Barrows, it's such an honor to have you on my flight. She said, but can I ask you something? Have you ever heard of a young man by the name of Wintley Phipps? He said, no, I've never heard of him. She says, hold on a minute. She went to her purse and got that cassette and handed it to him, saying, this has been a blessing to me, but I want you to have it. 3 weeks later, I got a call from Cliff Barrows saying, we want you to become one of the soloists with the Billy Graham Crusades. And for 25 years, it has been my honor to travel all over this country and some other parts of the world with a great hero of mine. And so some of the heroes I've met, and some I haven't. One of the things I must tell you about those heroes, though, they inspired me to dream. They inspired me to dream. But my greatest heroes are names you may never know. Elaine, that was my mother's name. When she saw that I had this gift and drive, she wanted to channel it right. So she bought me some Temptations cassettes. And I became the Temptations all by myself. I can turn a gray sky blue, or I could make it rain, you know, whatever I wanted to. Oh, I can build it. And I did all the voices, you know. Oh, I forgot to tell you about two other heroes that I met. Growing up in the 60s. Okay. Growing up in the 60s, I confess, I wanted to be another Sly Stone. But then I met Sly, and he was Stone, and I said, no, something's wrong with this picture. My hero is incoherent. And then I would get a microphone, and I'd practice singing like my new musical hero. I'd walk around the house singing, it's not unusual to be loved by anyone. Oh, I want to be Tom Jones so bad. But I met Tom Jones. I was 15 years old. Can I tell you something about Canada that I love about Canada? Canada's always kind of 10 years behind America in its innocence. You could get away with stuff 10 years longer in Canada than you can in America. Well, let me explain it this way. I had a job one time, a summer job, selling ladies' dresses in Canada door to door. I had a rack of dresses, and I'd knock on the door, and they'd open the door and let me in and look at all the different styles and stuff, and if they found a size they wanted, they would go in the back room while I was in the house, try it on, and if they liked it, pay me for it right there. Now, you know you couldn't do that in America. That's why I love Canada. But some of the heroes, I've been blessed. And one of them was my mother. She was an incredible human being. I want you to meet perhaps one of the greatest heroes of my life. She happens to be here today. It's my wife of 34 years, Linda. Will you mind saying hello to Linda? Linda, will you stand? I chased her till she caught me. And I told her if she ever leaves me, I'm going with her. But my wife is an incredible human being. I'll tell you a little bit about her later. But she is, you know, it's nice to be married for 34 years and look 34. And she's the only woman I know that has been kissed by the man who loves her on every continent of the world, except Antarctica. She's been kissed in China, in Australia, in Africa, in South America, in Europe. Hey, isn't that great? That's my wife. Thank God for the heroes who inspire us to dream and invest in us. Another name you'd never know. From Munising, Michigan, up in the UP. In 1972, I got ready to go to Oakwood College in Huntsville, Alabama. I hitched a ride from Canada to Alabama to go to school. And I got there, and I'd never seen the school, but I loved it when I saw it. And I went to the counter and I said, I didn't apply, but I want to register. Lady said, what did you say your name was? I said, my name is Wintley Phipps. She said, hold on a minute. She went to the back, she came out. She said, there's a ledger card here with your name on it, with a credit of $633, everything you need to register. This lady from Munising, Michigan, heard I was driving down to this school and sent the money down so I could get in school. I was there for 4 years in college, and she never sent me any more money. But every Mother's Day, she heard from me. Every Christmas, she heard from me. I graduated, went on to the seminary, and I was doing a master's degree, and she called me one day. She said, hey, how's your album coming? I said, album? What album? She said, what's the holdup? I said, oh, it just costs so much money. She said, what's it going to cost? I said, I just picked out the largest figure I ever said with my mouth. I said, at least $10,000. She said, oh, I'll give you $10,000. And in 1978, this lady wrote out a check for $10,000. And that's how my singing, recording career began. From Munising, Michigan. I can't name all the heroes. William Warfield, you ever heard that name? Married to Leontyne Price. You know, he had to be able to sing. William Warfield, I remember going to visit him. He was a teacher in Champaign-Urbana. And there, he said, I said to him, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm just singing. He said, I don't know how you're doing it, but you're doing a lot of things right. He said, my dad used to say, if you got a car that's running right, don't give it a tune-up, just leave it alone. He said, I'd leave it alone, don't let nobody touch that. Another one of my heroes that has invested into my life was a man by the name of Alex Haley, who wrote the book Roots. I'll never forget, before he died, he used to keep in his office a picture of a turtle sitting on a fence. He said that was his way of reminding himself that he didn't get there on his own. A hero who invested in my life. And you know, as I looked at all of those heroes, I found a common gene. You'll probably hear about it in the scientific journals. It's the HPLP gene. They all have it. Helping people live their potential. And you got it. Helping people live their potential. And since that day, when I don't know the day or the hour, but I caught that gene, just like you have it. I got it. And for the last 40 years, I've spent my life on planes. I've traveled more miles. The other day, I sat down in my house, opened a book to read, and I reached for my seatbelt. And I was fishing for it. Then I said, Lord, oh no. I've been in a plane crash, Spokane, Washington. Private plane came over the Cascade Mountains. It was dark and raining. We crashed on the tarmac. The pilot had forgotten to put the wheels down. The other day I was flying from here, Orlando to Cleveland. In the middle of the flight, I felt the plane shake like I'd never felt a plane shake before. And I heard a sound that I had. You know how when you fly a lot, you listen. Come on now, you listen for everything, because, you know. And I heard a sound I'd never heard before. It went something like this. And the flight attendant was pushing the cart beside me, and she stopped. And I heard her say, oh no. This does not sound good. She started backing up. She stowed it away. And after she stowed it away, the pilot came on and said, ladies and gentlemen, we have an emergency. We've lost our number one engine. Now, you got to know, we're reasonable people. So I'm calculating we only had two. Were they serviced together? You know, I'm asking pertinent questions. And the plane got deathly quiet. After a while, the flight attendant told the pilot that we were really scared. So he got back on to comfort us. He said, ladies and gentlemen, I understand that you're really concerned, but we've radioed ahead to Atlanta. They've cleared the airspace. We're going to go in. He said, and I don't want you to worry. He said, I've done this many times before. In the simulator. That's like I slept at Holiday Inn Express last night, and we're going to do surgery. And so I've been spending my life powered by that gene, the HPLP gene, helping people live their potential. I've been touching lives all over. Got on a plane. I used to fly Eastern a lot. Fly Los Angeles to Atlanta again. Saw this lady, recognized who she was, went back to my seat, got a cassette, knelt down beside her. I said, you know, I feel impressed to give this to you. She said, thank you so much. She said, I traveled a little Walkman here, and I can play this tape you give me as I travel. The plane landed. She's standing in the jetway waiting for me. She takes my hand. She squeezes it. Her eyes are misty. She says, thank you so much. God bless you. That lady was Natalie Wood, a few days before she drowned. And when I heard that she had drowned, I was shaken, but I knew it wasn't by accident that our paths had crossed. I cannot begin to tell you the lives. I'm singing in Baltimore, Maryland, 29 years ago. Come down off the platform. A young lady standing there. She says, excuse me, sir, I just heard you sing, and I'm really discouraged. She's about to be fired from her job. She said, I feel like I can talk to you. Do you have time to talk to me? I said, sure. She came by our home, and we prayed together. And after praying with her, I looked at her, and I said, you know, before you go, I don't know why, but God has impressed me to tell you He's going to bless you, give you an opportunity to speak to millions of people. She said, no, you think God would do that for me? And it was Oprah Winfrey. That's how we met 29 years ago. This story I'm telling you could only happen in America. I'm singing in Birmingham, Alabama, 20 years ago. They announced that the governor's coming. I straightened up my tie, brushed on my suit, and they brought in Bill Clinton. And I didn't know who he was. So since I was in Birmingham, they said, the governor's coming. I assumed he was the governor of Alabama. So when they put him beside me, I went into this long story with him of how much I love Alabama and what a great state Alabama is. And I noticed he's puzzled, why am I extolling the virtues of Alabama? And when the evening wore on, they made the introductions. That's when it dawned on me, oh no, there's the governor of Arkansas. I sang, he spoke. I didn't see him again until about 4 months before the election in 1992. I was singing somewhere. He walked into the room campaigning. I thought that was my chance to fix it, let him know I love Arkansas too. So I walked out, I said, Governor, you probably don't know me or remember me. He said, I remember you. You sang for me a year ago in Birmingham, Alabama. I said, how could you remember that? He said, how could I forget it? And after I sang, I've been blessed to sing for every president since Ronald Reagan. Sat at the breakfast table with every president of the United States since Ronald Reagan. And after I sang for Clinton's first prayer breakfast, he sent me a beautiful handwritten note thanking me for my ministry and the music, how much he was blessed by it. And he signed it with thanks, Bill Clinton, governor of Alabama. Only in America. And then I'll tell you a little sidebar to that story. When the Monica Lewinsky story broke, I watched him aging in front of my very eyes. But I was able, at a next venue, tell you how I was able to intervene. And he was able, because of influence, to go before the American people, nudged by something I'd sent him, to say for the first time to the world, I did sin. I was wrong. Only in America. And I'm an equal opportunity guy. I do stuff for Democrats and Republicans. I sang for this big function one time where President Clinton spoke, and the very same day I had to rush across town and sing for this big Republican function, same night. And when I got there, I announced that I had just come from singing for the President of the United States. There was this boo and rumbling that went through the audience. I said, wait a minute. I always go where people really need the Lord. And there was this polite applause, just like here tonight. And then I said, and that's why I'm here. I got that gene. Helping people live their potential. And so I'm on a train, Amtrak, Baltimore to Philadelphia. On Amtrak, when you don't want somebody to sit next to you, you know what you do. You camp out. You put your briefcase in front of you, your papers all around you, send a message, find someplace else to sit. Well, this man had camped out, but he looked really discouraged to me. So I walked up to him, I said, is anybody sitting next to you? He smiled, no, and he pulled up his papers, and it was Chuck Colson of Watergate fame, who went to prison for the Watergate scandal and came out and started this incredible organization ministering to people in prison. He began to take me into the prisons with him to sing. And I was shaken by what I saw. I did not know that one of every 3 young men in America between the ages of 18 and 30 who look like my sons are now in prison in America. One of every 3. I went to one prison in Ridgeland, South Carolina, and greeting the young men, talking to them, and just for a moment, I felt like I was at Morehouse or on a black college campus. I was shaken. And so I began an organization called the U.S. Dream Academy. And we now tutor and mentor children whose parents are incarcerated, because we found out that 70% of the kids who end up in prison come from the children of prisoners. And we have centers in Washington, Baltimore, Philadelphia, New Jersey, Houston, Memphis, Salt Lake City, Los Angeles, Indianapolis, Orlando. And now I live my dream because I got the HPLP gene, helping people live their potential. I started it, didn't realize how expensive it would be. I have to raise $400,000 a month every month. But you know, when you treat people with respect, when you don't know who they are or where they're going or what they can do for you one day. So in 2008 and 2009 were tough fundraising years for charities. We have a fundraising dinner each year for about $1 million. We try to raise $1 million at this dinner because we need every bit of it. 2008, we set the goal at $1.3 million to raise. 7 days before, I'm sitting at $500,000 and I'm agonizing. I need, well, like $800,000. I need a $500,000 miracle. And then my phone rings. And the lady said, Mr. Phipps, I've got a FedEx package here to send to you from Miss Oprah Winfrey. Where would you like me to send it? I said, well, send it to the corporate office. She said, well, there's a special way she wants you to open it. I said, well, send it to my home. I got home. I live in Vero Beach, Florida. I got home. There was this beautifully wrapped box, handwritten note, thanking me for my ministry in her life, for my prophetic words of wisdom, for my kindness. She was very generous in her words. And I saw this envelope that she had put in. When I opened it, she had put in a check for $1.2 million. And behind that envelope, I saw another envelope dated January 1, 2009, with another check for $1.2 million. And behind that envelope was another envelope with another check for $1.3 million. She sent about $4 million in 3 envelopes. And she called me from South Africa where she had gone to see her girl. She said, did you get it? I said, oh, thank you so much. And then she emailed me and she said, you know, I love giving and I love making it fun. She said, I considered sending you a FedEx envelope like 3 days in succession. So Monday you get the first check, Tuesday you get the second check, Wednesday you get the third check. She said, but I figured by the 4th day, you'd be chasing the FedEx man down. She was right. She was right. Here's a woman who got the gene, helping people live their potential. She got it. And you have it. It is at the foundation of your success, this gene. True story. In New York City, once they saw a disturbing crack appear on the 42nd floor of a high-rise apartment building. And they sent the architect to come and investigate. He arrived in the building manager, he heard he was in the building, and took the elevator up to the 42nd floor looking for him. He couldn't find him. They said, oh, no. He's in the 6th basement, 6 floors down. So he then took the elevator to the 6th basement, and he found the architect. He said, what you doing down here? He said, our crack is on the 42nd floor. He said, your crack may be on the 42nd floor, but your problem is not on the 42nd floor. Your problem is down here at the foundation. True story. What had happened was a security guard who worked in the building wanted to build a garage onto his house and didn't have the money. So every day before leaving work, he would take the elevator to the 6th basement, chisel out a brick, put it in his bag, and take it home. And after 5 years of doing that, a crack appeared on the 42nd floor. When you are having difficulty making what you do successful, don't go looking to fix what's happening on the 42nd floor. Go back to your foundation. Go back to the HPLP gene. Make sure that you're about helping people live their potential. I'm going to give you a couple quotes before I leave. And these are at the foundation of who I am. It is in the quiet crucible of our personal, private sufferings that our noblest dreams are born and our greatest gifts are given, and often given in compensation for what we've been through. It is in the quiet crucible of our personal, private sufferings that our noblest dreams are born and our greatest gifts are given, and often given in compensation for what we have been through. Make sure that you never lose the power of this gene, helping people live their potential. And people may never know your name. They may not. But history will record. History will record that there lived a man, there lived a woman who helped people live their potential. I want to tell you a story as I close. An old black lady in Alabama told me this story. She said to me one day, she said, "Did you know that just about all Negro spirituals are written on the black notes of the piano?" You look skeptical. So I brought a camera and a piano to prove to you what I'm talking about. You can go home tonight and play almost any Negro spiritual if you just play the black notes on the piano. Watch. There are 5 black notes on the piano. And you can play any Negro spiritual. Just play those notes. Watch. You know that? Every time I... Come on, you remember, you learned that in school. How about this one? That's because the slaves didn't come to America with do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, di, da. That's somebody else's scale, okay? All they had in their musical scale were those 5 notes. We know it in music as the pentatonic scale, and they built the power and pathos of the Negro spiritual on 5 notes. When you study music, you also come across what are known as white spirituals. Yes. And they're often white composers who would work with this scale. They used to call Negro spirituals slave songs, and many call this scale the slave scale. And I'm going to play for you what some musicologists think is the most famous white spiritual built on the slave scale or just the black notes. Anybody know who wrote that song? Thank you. A man by the name of John Newton. But do you know what John Newton did before he became a Christian? He was the captain of a slave ship. And many believe heard this melody that sounds very much like a West African sorrow chant. and wrote the words Amazing Grace and set his words to a slave melody. I believe that song was written just the way it's supposed to have been written, so that we would be reminded that whether black or white, we're all in this together. We really are. And I went to the Library of Congress and I looked up that song, and wherever you see it authentically printed, you know what it says? Words, John Newton. Melody, unknown. Do you know how many people's lives have been changed by that song? By someone named Unknown, who had the gene, the HPLP gene. And I'm going to close by sharing this song with you. By the way, somebody put it up on YouTube, and it is now the most watched inspirational video of any kind by an inspirational artist. I sing the first verse. I imagine the way John Newton probably first heard it, coming up out of the belly of a slave ship. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. And snares I have already come. 'Twas grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been shining as the sun. We've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Hallelujah, hallelujah, amen. Hallelujah, hallelujah, amen. Hallelujah, hallelujah, amen. God bless you.